Hey everybody, Nom here. In this video I'd like to explain why the knife is the worst melee weapon in Left 4 Dead 2. Let me start by explaining everything there is to know about how melee works within this game. The technical mechanics are very interesting. All melee weapons share many characteristics. They are classified as backup weapons and take up the secondary weapon slot. Excluding the chainsaw, they kill common infected and the smoker, boomer, hunter, jockey, and spitter in one hit on any difficulty. They kill the charger in one hit as well, but only if the head is struck, otherwise it takes 2 melee hits. It's important to note, hitting the legs of the smoker, boomer, and hunter deals reduced damage and will not kill in a single hit. Melee damage is not a flat number, but rather percentage based. That's why it always kills witches in 4 hits and tanks in 20, regardless of difficulty level. Melee weapons are separated into 2 categories, sharp slashing weapons and blunt weapons. One difference between the two is the visual effects used when killing common infected. Slashing weapons remove body parts and decapitate the target when the head is hit. Blunt weapons don't remove body parts, but explode the head when the target's head is hit. Another difference is sharp weapons have the ability to stop a smoker from grabbing a survivor. If timed correctly, a survivor can cut the smoker's tongue before getting grabbed. In practice, this upside isn't useful very often, but it can be an impressive maneuver in clutch situations. The way melee weapons deal damage is in an arc. With the console command, melee show swing 1, it's possible to see the arc. Basically, invisible rectangular prisms are projected in front of survivors, and if they intersect with the infected, a hit is registered and damage is dealt. Interestingly, melee weapons have a built-in system to avoid friendly fire. Many of the rectangular prisms ignore teammates. It depends on the weapon, but generally when swinging a melee weapon at a survivor, the first few and last few rectangular prisms do not count as a hit. Melee weapons swing in the exact same way every time unless the fire button is held down or clicked again right after firing. In the cases where weapons are used again in quick succession, a second and sometimes third swinging animation is played. This is not just cosmetic, melee weapons deal damage based on which swinging animation is played. The main distinguishing factor between melee weapons is their attack intervals and how they're swung. The shovel is a blunt weapon, it has a slow attack interval, it deals damage horizontally left and right. The frying pan is a blunt weapon, it has a slow attack interval, it deals damage horizontally left and right. The guitar is a blunt weapon, it has a slow attack interval, it deals damage horizontally left and right. The fire axe is a sharp weapon, it has a slow attack interval, it deals damage horizontally left and right. The crowbar is a sharp weapon, it has a slow attack interval, it deals damage horizontally left and right. The baseball bat is a blunt weapon, it has a medium attack interval, it deals damage across the middle of the screen and then diagonally in an X shape. The cricket bat is a blunt weapon, it has a medium attack interval, it deals damage across the center of the screen and then diagonally in an X shape. The pitchfork is a sharp weapon, it has a medium attack interval, it deals damage vertically, diagonally, and then horizontally. The golf club is a blunt weapon, it has a fast attack interval, it deals damage horizontally left and right. The katana is a sharp weapon, it has a fast attack interval, it deals damage horizontally left and right. The machete is a sharp weapon, it has a very fast attack interval, it deals damage horizontally left and right. The nightstick is a blunt weapon, it has the fastest attack interval, it deals damage horizontally left and right. And now onto the knife. The knife is a sharp weapon, it has a fast attack interval, it deals damage in a curve from left to the bottom of the screen. Before explaining why this damage arc is bad, there's still something important to explain about melee mechanics. The damage arc that appears in front of survivors changes based on the angle of the camera. The shape of the arc contorts. Aiming up and down from the horizon increases the contortion. Aiming straight up and straight down has the greatest effect. In general, the further up or down the user looks, the smaller the damage arc becomes. This is the reason why melee weapons seem less reliable when used on targets above and below the user. There are a few exceptions. The bats with their X-shaped damage arcs bend, but don't shrink. The pitchfork with its strange arc shapes also bend. Now let's look at the knife. When swung normally, without looking up or down, it has a unique arc that goes from left to the bottom in a curve. This is an inefficient arc. The rectangular prisms point downwards, so targets directly ahead need to be closer in order to get hit. Targets to the right will have a lower chance of getting hit. The damage arc not going over the crosshair means in real gameplay it's harder to aim a swing. Players use their crosshair to aim their weapons, but since the damage doesn't go over the crosshair, they can't reliably use it with the knife. Predicting if a hit will land becomes more difficult. When the camera is tilted up and down, the damage arc bends. Tilting down curves the end of the arc left and decreases the overall size. Tilting the camera up bends both ends of the arc upwards. Tilting the camera up about 15 to 20 degrees produces the largest damage arc and aims the arc forward in front of the survivor. This is probably the most efficient angle to use the knife. It's still not a perfect arc like other melee weapons, but it's more efficient than aiming the weapon forward towards the horizon. It's unwieldy to have to tilt the camera upward to make the knife's functionality mimic that of other melee weapons. The freedom to look around while attacking has to be sacrificed to make the knife almost as good as its alternatives. The knife is the worst melee weapon because of its unique downward pointing damage arc. The knife's not entirely bad. At least it has the desirable characteristics of being a sharp melee weapon and having a fast attack interval. These upsides don't save it from mediocrity, but at least it's not the worst by every possible metric. Another extremely minor upside to the weapon is it doesn't shake the screen when swung like other melee weapons. Useful if you get motion sickness, I suppose. The absolute worst thing about the knife doesn't have anything to do with its functionality. The real reason why it's the worst is its shape. Picture this, you're playing Left 4 Dead 2 and you spot the outline of an adrenaline shot temporary health pickup in the distance. You approach it in order to pick it up and then you see it. You've been fooled. It wasn't an adrenaline shot in the distance, it was actually the worst melee weapon in the game. The real reason why the knife is the worst is because it regularly tricks players into thinking it's a useful item. I laugh, but this is genuine criticism that any seasoned player will attest to. The feeling of disappointment from seeing temporary health in the distance and then realizing it isn't real is awful. This video is about the knife, but I've explained the mechanics of every melee weapon excluding one, the chainsaw. The chainsaw is a special case, but for the sake of completeness, I'll explain it quickly. The chainsaw is considered a sharp melee weapon. It can cut a smoker's tongue. It dismembers common infected, but differently than other melee weapons. It does so more gruesomely. It has a fuel gauge. It consumes fuel when firing and can run out of fuel. When the fuel depletes completely, the weapon is automatically dropped and replaced with the pistol. There's a significant wind-up time after switching to the chainsaw before it can be used. The chainsaw rapidly deals damage in front of the user. The range is shorter than other melee weapons, but the rectangular prisms are larger. Like other melee weapons, tilting the camera up and down narrows the damaging area, but differently for the chainsaw. The chainsaw creates rectangular prisms rapidly with random offset. Rather than the arc changing, the random offset shrinks. And that's about it. The knife is the worst melee weapon in my opinion, and maybe now you share the same opinion. On the bright side, the weapon looks nice and has a really cool sound effect when picked up or switched to. Listen to this. That is one satisfying sound effect. Thanks for watching. Au revoir.